Right, one thing I wanted to ask about was, I know again, the stories of the specific teams have been told, but I wanted to go back in time and ask about a couple of key things. So one thing is this, right, people might know one of obviously the first coaching gigs for LS was when you were in Europe and you did the Super Hot Crew team and then you were in the EULCS, right? And famously, obviously I'm not going to ask about that team, it's not as interesting, but the player I do want to ask about, because there's a very specific reason, is because obviously he's been part of your career since, is the mid laner. At the time he was called like Corey or whatever, but now he's called Selfie, isn't he? That's the name famously that people might remember him, or maybe it was the other way around, maybe he changed Corey after Selfie, I forget which way it was, but obviously this player, this was the year where people don't know, he was like a breakout mid laner, it's Polish mid laner, he looked good, he looked like actually he was one of the players where you'd think in the future. I would say that year for him was like when, you know, that year when like Nemesis and Abadagi and Humanoid all came in. It's like they're not at the peak yet, but you can already see there's some potential there and they're good, and like those guys, you're mixing up with the best, you're already in a league with, you know, Expected, Froggen and these guys who were the monsters, so you can already see there is something there, right? Now obviously the problem was this career was basically that this team was the height of his career. After that he was like briefly in the H2K one that didn't work out too well, and then obviously since then he's barely played, or he's been famously on a lot of benches or on academy level teams and so his career in terms of his name never went any beyond there. But obviously even in the last few years, I mean, part of it was for that meme where you had him on the fucking tier list of mid lane in like season 9 or something, but obviously he's someone who's been in your circle, you mentioned him since. What I want to ask is this, essentially I'm saying I do get why initially he was fascinating, I think there was potential there, I think maybe he just mismanaged his career or something. What I want to know is what was the connection with Selfie? Why has Selfie been a through line in your career, and why did you sort of like, you're someone who obviously to the end now you still hold out that like he was a talented player and maybe he could even do something in the last few years, right? What's special about Selfie in this sense?
I thought Selfie, so I think my priority is on what made players good, and I would always point to, it's actually really rare that I champion a player. I think this is something, because I stream so much, because I tweet so much, because I make so many videos, it's actually really rare I fully, you know, champion someone like behind them. And I would point to, and again, someone could say that's like a fallacy, that I was very consistent in this regard with very elite players, you know, of old. I think even in the first Reflections video, that was the first time Apto was mentioned in the West.
Sure.
And, you know, I went on to do similar things with a lot of other players that ended up being very, very successful. And I always thought that the things that I valued were clearly very different from what other people valued, and that I cared a lot more about the mechanics of a player and the responses that a player would choose to make when presented with certain situations, which could give you deeper insight into maybe what they're thinking, what are they prioritizing, and what type of things do they think are important, like with their own play and practice and stuff. So I always thought Selfie was very, very good in that regard. I think Selfie had other issues as a player because, again, he was very young when he had the SHC breakout thing. And I think Selfie had other things that are not for like me to discuss. Not that they're bad, but everyone has stuff that goes on and whatnot.
He had a lot of weird idiosyncratic qualities, put it that way, right?
So yeah, he had some stuff. I mean, he's not a bad person at all.
No, just a strange person. I would just say, yeah.
And Selfie, I always liked Selfie. I always got along with him, but he also had a knack for somehow always getting in with the bad crowd. I mean, there was the iconic leak that actually came from me, right? When he went to have that conversation with MYM, I was the one that told him, right, you should actually get this on record. And there's still to this day the unreleased audio clip that I believe Richard Lewis has, but no one else ends up having it. There's the unreleased audio clip that Raya even knew about and didn't act on, which is insane to me.
Oh, it's insane.
So the unreleased audio clip is insanity. Now, it spawned the meme, Move Your Mothers and whatnot. Then after that, I tried to bring him over to Roar in North America, a team that I was on for like literally 2 weeks or something. Before they, I joined like a week before they had to play their qualifier match to NACS Challenger Series when relegation still existed. And he flew out and he was in Vancouver for like a week or something like that. But then LEC, not a franchise league yet, MYM was trying to enforce contracts. Riot didn't know how to respond to it. And we actually got lied to. And so he flew back to Europe and ended up playing on MYM. I think that there was a player named like Blizer 3000 or something who looked identical to Ocelot at the time, who was the fill-in mid laner. And then MYM went on to get, nothing happened with MYM. And after that, what happened to Selfie? He joined like Schalke, and he had one of the highest salaries in Europe or something, I believe at that point, to my knowledge. And this is when salary inflation was just starting. When I first joined League, right, a really high salary was 4,000 a month, 3,000 a month. That was really high. And then by this point, 8,000, 10,000, these numbers were starting to come in per month, right? And Selfie was above that. And so I think he felt really good about that. And so he would neglect other issues that were maybe present and whatnot. And then after that, he got bounced around with various teams. And there was the potential to have him go to Gravity at one point. That didn't end up happening. Then there was some rumor that I don't remember the validity of because so many years have passed, but the CLG thing, where maybe he was going to go to CLG as a role swap or something. And then after that, there was Tempo Storm. We're on Tempo Storm together, where, he was the best performing player. I think if any of the players were interviewed nowadays, it really was just everyone felt bad because Selfie was so much better than everyone else on the team. And so they felt really bad for Selfie because Selfie became really discouraged. And then he had a falling out with Reynad at that time. And then after Tempo Storm, I don't remember.
UK, right?
Yeah. It might be that instance. And then he went to North America for a while, and then nothing really came anymore. And I would always talk with him from time to time, and he would complain about certain things obviously happening inside of the scene, and he would bounce around. Then there was a point where I was on BBQ, and we wanted Selfie because we 2 import slots on Challenger Series. And we were having issues with the mid laner and the top laner on BBQ. And we thought if Selfie comes, then maybe, everything will work out. And at this time, I think he was on FlyQuest. I think he was on the bench. And I believe the general manager wanted $60K for a buyout. And what ended up happening is the BBQ management said no. And then I said, I'll pay it. And then the BBQ management got really offended that I offered to pay it, and actually caused a huge fight with all the players and everything else. Not the player, like the management was really angry in front of me and all the players and stuff. And so that ended up happening. So Selfie didn't go to BBQ. Selfie then came to Korea that off season, this is on Leaguepedia, and we all scrimmed together for a few weeks with Selfie playing mid lane. And it was really obvious because it was BBQ with Selfie in mid lane. And the idea was that LCK was franchising soon, and we knew how much money the Challenger Series spot would be worth. So the plan was that I would just fund it. We would get into the Challenger Series spot, and then we would split it between the players and myself. But then because I'm funding it, I would get a % higher cut of whatever the slot would sell for. And there were some Korean teams that were really upset at this, and they tried to prevent it by saying that Selfie couldn't play because he wasn't eligible to play because he didn't have a proper account, but he had a Riot account, so technically he did have a proper account. So there was some stuff there, and then what ended up happening is one of the players at the time got into an argument with another one of the players, and literally the day of the tournament, we didn't go. That was it. But in scrims, everything was really well. Everything was going really well. Everyone on, all the Korean players really enjoyed having Selfie and whatnot. And then after that, he stayed for about a month and then went back to Europe. And then that was probably the last time that him and I had a lot of frequent contact.
So it sounds like basically, like, you do think he had the talent and he was a prospect, but he just zigged when he should have zagged a lot of times in his career.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, sometimes we see this, right? You see players that I think in LCK especially, I think now, because there's less frequent turnover of players happening, right? Where players that have been around for a while and then suddenly they just get a okay enough roster with players, and then suddenly they seem like they're really, really good. I always thought Selfie had a really, really good first-person view. And I always thought Selfie had really, really good mechanics, and I always thought he was very calm under pressure inside of the game with like mechanical execution and stuff. And these were all traits that I really, really valued. And I thought Selfie, if you could give him real, tangible arguments and reasons to do something, then he would end up doing it. I remember the first scrims in Korea where he was so uncomfortable that I want to say he almost cried, but I can't remember. It was me and him on a walk. His face did get really red, and he said he felt really bad about the way that we were playing because he's not used to it from Europe with like the Koreans and like the freezing and just playing for laning phase and lane manipulation and economy and stuff, and always drafting to just like outscale the opponent or outlayer and stuff. And he got really emotional because he was so conflicted with how different the game felt playing that way versus how he was used to. And so yeah, that's what ended up happening. I always held him in really high regard for his ability. But I think that he loses respect for people really quick. And I think that once that happens, I think he just sort of shuts down, or he just, he's only going to be there for himself at that point. But I mean, he's much older now, and it's been several years, so people do change. He shows up in my Twitch chat time to time. He's now actually I think a lot of people don't know this. He's the C9 Academy coach.
Oh, okay.
He ended up at C9. He ended up at C9 Academy. He was trialing at some point, and then he officially got the job. So that's what he's up to now.
Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.